What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. I know it's been a while since I've been live. Oh my gosh, I think it's been about 9 days. I just needed a break. A lot going on in the world. I'm sure there's a lot going on in your life as well and in your area and where you are also. So I'm doing something a little different today where I'm going to be streaming from my computer. I really want to show my screen. But today's live, as I said, will be focusing once again on remote work and how remote work is really looking to be the key to success for businesses and leaders and people in their professional career, especially as we move deeper into the Iran war and how the Iran war is hindering operations and productivity, for businesses and countries as well, especially when it relates to the cost of fuel due to, conflicts with access to oil and natural resources. So that's something that's really, really interesting and something that connects with what I've been speaking about for years. My business is remote business and I have been doing remote work for gosh, since 2011. I started my business as a remote business. So I understand the importance of remote work and how remote work is the key to business success. And that's just one thing. Right. Getting used to doing this live versus, doing it on my phone. It's a little bit different. So I don't see the chat. I guess it's like an issue with YouTube going on. But, we're going to go ahead and get into it when it comes to this. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen specifically for those that haven't watched my past lives. This is actually picking up off of this article right here, from speaking about how Thailand and Vietnam are pushing for remote work to save energy. I spoke about this about a week ago. I spoke about that article and how Thailand and Vietnam are looking to invest back into remote work for government workers, and even businesses within the country as well are looking to utilize remote operations. And the same, and mentioned there, how remote work is the key to business success and how businesses are going to start reinvesting in remote work and why it is a part of the future of work and the modern workplace design, and how it must be understood as that. Although, I always speak about, how businesses are living in an archaic mindset and not ready to move forward. But this situation that we are living in within now highlights that it is that the key to business success. And I'm being justified by that. My thinking has been justified by that with a new IEA report that highlights the options to ease oil prices and pressures on consumers in response to the Middle East supply disruption. I'm going to go ahead and read the whole thing. You guys can read it with me. Demand side measures available to governments, businesses, and households span road transportation, air travel, and industry amid strains in diesel, jet fuel, and LPG markets. This is something that I've just been stating. Specifically, let's get into it. The International Energy Agency today set out a range of demand side actions that governments, businesses, and households can take to alleviate economic impacts on consumers of the disruption to oil markets stemming from the war in the Middle East. The conflict has triggered the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market, with shipping through the Straits of Hormuz, which normally carries around 20% of global oil consumption, reduced to a trickle. Around 20 million barrels per day of crude oil and oil products typically transit the strait. The loss of these flows has tightened markets significantly, pushing crude oil prices above $100 per barrel and driving even sharper increases in refined products such as diesel, jet fuel, and liquefied petroleum gas. Restoring transit through the Straits of Hormuz remains essential to stabilize the global markets. In the meantime, countries are acting on both supply and demand. On March 11th, the IEA member countries agreed to release 400 million barrels of oil from emergency reserves, the largest stock draw in the agency's history. However, supply side measures alone cannot fully offset the scale of the disruption. Addressing demand is critical and immediate tool to reduce pressure consumers by improving affordability and supporting energy security. A new IEE report identifies 10 measures that can be implemented quickly by governments, businesses, and households. These actions focus primarily on road transport, which accounts for around 45% of global oil demand, but also cover aviation, cooking, and industry. Widespread adoption, where possible, would amplify their global impact and help cushion the shock. The war in the Middle East is creating a major energy crisis, including the largest supply disruption in the history of the global market or oil market. In the absence of a swift resolution, the impacts on energy markets and economies are set to become more and more severe, said IEA Executive Director Fatah Birol. If I said that wrong, you guys can correct me in the comments. As the global energy authority, the IEA is doing everything we can to support the stability of the energy markets. We have recently launched the largest ever release of IEA emergency oil stocks, and I am in close contact with key governments around the world, including major energy producers and consumers, as part of our international energy diplomacy. In addition to this, today's report provides a menu of immediate and concrete measures that can be taken on the demand side by governments and businesses and households to shelter consumers from the impact of the crisis. It draws on the IEA's decades of experience in this field and highlights measures that have been proven to work in practice in different contexts. I believe that it will be useful to governments around the world in both advanced and developing economies in these challenging times. In the road transport, a combination of behavioral and policy measures can deliver rapid savings. Many of these measures have implemented in the past and are again being considered in several countries. Working from home, where possible, let me highlight, working from home where possible, reduces fuel demand for commuting while lowering highway speed limits by at least 10 kilometers per hour, cuts fuel across both passenger and vehicle freight. So basically, reducing speeding. Do you really believe that countries are going to start reducing speeding? Hold on, let me stop sharing real quick so you guys. Do you really think that countries are going to reduce speeding and to kind of enhance or forget that to limit the need for oil? I highly doubt that. But let me go ahead and continue reading. I won't share my screen. I just go ahead and try to skim through this really quickly. We're almost done. We can go down to the immediate actions because as you can see, it's just going to repeat at the bottom. Let me go back and share my screen again. But it's a long article. I should have read it more in depth before I shared it. The immediate actions to reduce demand are to work from home where possible, reduce highway speed limits by at least 10 kilometers, encourage public transit, alternate private car access to roads in large cities, increase car sharing, and adopt efficient driving practices, efficient driving for road commercial vehicles and delivery of goods, divert liquid petroleum gas use from transport, and avoid air travel where alternative options exist, and where possible, switch to other modern cooking solutions and leverage flexibility with petrochemical feedstocks and implement short-term efficiency and maintenance. Now, overall, as we see from that article, it is highlighting the importance of remote work. It's highlighting the importance of remote work because when you utilize remote work, you're reducing the dependency on the use of oil or liquid petroleum gas or any high energy cost. Because when you're working from home, the idea is that you're less likely to commute and do those types of activities that result in more dependence on oil. Also, when you're working remotely, the idea is that, it's allowed, or if you're not working remotely, the idea is that, we're all going to combine and work together. These are two things that must be understood when we look at the future of work and the modernization of the workforce. So, pretty much, the modernization of the workforce, the future of work which I've already said that is remote work and that is the future and that is how we are moving towards a new ideology and understanding of how work can be conducted. And that means, going back to what it was, during the pandemic and the understanding that, it relied a lot more on us understanding how to communicate better and collaborate better. But those lessons that we did learn did not stay with us and they did not follow us as we move forward and outside of the pandemic and moving forward as if the pandemic did not happen by picking up the old ideologies and practices that have not helped to move us forward into the future of work. Now, hence, enter in the Iran war. So that means that now those ideas and methodologies of modern day work are now being picked back up, but they're picked back up in a more stubborn way. As we see, I'm in America, and the idea is still not remote work first, it's more about butts and seats, and even the idea of the fair compensation when it comes to those that do work hybrid or remote constructs versus those that are in person, the pay scale is even different. Thinking from the idea that those that do have modern styles of working, are less reliant, and working inefficiently and not utilizing their time productively. That has also come out from that as well. So there's a lot of misunderstandings and misinformation when it comes to remote work and how it contributes to the future of work and what the future of work actually looks like. And that is something that must be understood, how we move forward, how we go about, you know, looking and taking it to the next level. That's something we must understand, and that's something that we need to understand how we move forward and as we create this modern workplace and this modern workforce, it's all about how we communicate, right? That's one of the lessons that's going to strengthen us in these modern work designs. It is how we communicate, because how we communicate is going to generate how people are understanding what is required of them and how leaders are understanding what is actually happening and occurring or what is needed, right? So that effective performance can actually occur, because the overall goal is to have a successful outcome, whatever that goal is, goal attainment, goal achievement, what leaders are needing from individuals, what individuals are needing from their leaders and from their C-suite and executives and the company overall. So all of that must be understood, and that it can only be understood through how we communicate. So regardless as how we look back and look towards the idea of remote work and the shaping of the future of work and the new work design, it must all be designed based on the importance of understanding the human. The human is the key to business success. The human is the key to understanding where do we need to change? How do we need to go about evolving to strengthen the workplace, to strengthen how we achieve goals, to strengthen how we achieve success? And what does the success actually look like? These are all the things that must be understood. And that's how you know from there how you're entering into a new dynamic of how the business can be successful. That's something to understand and something to recognize. Well, I hope that this brings a little more understanding and justification for the importance of remote work and how other organizations and countries around the world are going back to implementing it, even though it never really went away. It's just been kind of implemented into the old way of working, and recognizing that these forms of technologies must be utilized more, but they're still not utilized effectively because employees are still burdening the cost of the aspects of the war and what's going on and how that's impacting all employees and all individuals overall, regardless of where you live in the world. And that's something that leadership must be recognizing and understanding and taking into consideration as they look forward to looking at new ways to modernize their workplace. But also, when you're looking at this, it all must include some form of evaluation to have an understanding and an actual systemic structure and approach to implementing these changes, to have a true understanding of how individuals are feeling about it and how they're feeling about it is impacting how they're performing, and how in turn that is impacting how productive they are and how successful they are, and how that is contributing to the business's bottom line. Because remember, everything is connected within a business, and it all comes from who? The human, because the human is what drives business success. The human is the key to overall performance. These AI systems and tools, such as, the remote technology that we're utilizing, as I said, they are tools. So, yes, having a remote work plan, framework, and structure is beneficial, is awesome, is necessary, but it means nothing if we're not understanding how it's impacting the individual. So that's something that must be understood, something that must be recognized, and something that must never be forgotten. Only then will there be actual true profits, business success, and a return on investment for any initiative that's been implemented. And when I say return on investment, I'm not just speaking from a monetary aspect, but I'm also speaking from how employees are benefiting, those intangibles that they like to call them, but really are what lead to the monetary outcomes and the monetary benefits. How employees are feeling and how they're feeling determines their motivation to actually perform and their confidence to perform effectively. That's something that every leader must understand. And that's why it's important to lead from the human first, because that's the key. And that's what gives you your return on investment and actual positive aspects to the bottom line. Well, that's something to understand, something to continuously something to continuously highlight when you go about, in your workspaces and in society, wherever you're going about creating change. I hope this live has inspired you and inspired you to inspire others by putting the human first. And as always, be the change. Love yourself and others. Bye.